All right, folks, I think we're about ready to get started. Good afternoon. This is Francisco from VCS. Thank you for signing up for our class this afternoon. This afternoon's class is titled Basic Setup, Schedule Exceptions, and Job Assignment Setup. And so during the course of the next hour to an hour and a half, we're going to learn how to enter job assignments, time off reason codes, as well as overtime reason codes. Now, to enter these items, we're going to log into the desktop application of our program, which I currently have loaded up. But just a few things before we begin. During the course of this hour-long session or hour-and-a-half-long session, I will keep the microphones muted. Although I won't be able to hear you, you will be able to send me any questions or comments you have using the chat option of the GoToTraining program that you have loaded up. And I'll be happy to answer any of those questions. Now, in between the various screens we're going to cover today, I'll take some short pauses. I'll open up the microphones. We have a relatively small group today, so I think that should be okay. We should have plenty of time for any questions that you might have. Now, with regards to that GoToTraining, let me just remind you that on the left portion of that control panel, there's an orange button at the top with a white arrow in it. If you click on that button, that will hide the GoToTraining control panel, and you will be able to see my entire screen. You can always click on that button once again to open up the control panel in the event you want to send me a question. And by the way, that's found at the very bottom of that screen. So if you click on the plus sign right next to where it says chat, you can just type in your question where it says type message here, and you can just press the send button. Okay, so we're ready to begin. I am going to log on using the administrative username and password, which is SECADM, and that's also my password. And so you will be using that same username and password throughout your setup of the scheduling system. Let's click on Sign In. And we're going to be working under the Administration drop-down menu. And the first screen we're going to look at is found under the Job Assignment Center. It is called Setup Jobs. So a job is an assignment that can be applied to anyone's schedule. So using my daily schedule here as an example, you'll notice I have a day and a night shift. And so aside from just working the standard shift, I can take any person working and assign them to any one of these jobs. This particular individual might be working a particular zone. They might also be acting as an OIC. Now you can work multiple jobs at the same time, or you can adjust the hours if necessary. Now typically jobs are going to be patrol areas, some sort of work assignment, but it can also apply to things like officer in charge or field training officer, or really anything that is a pay upgrade. So if by working in that capacity, that individual is now paid a differential of some sort, And when I say differential, I'm not talking about standard shift differential, but if they get an extra couple dollars an hour for working in that capacity, you may want to consider creating a job assignment to reflect that. Now, job assignments can be applied on a day-to-day basis, weekly, monthly, or even semi-permanent basis. Let's close that out. And let's bring up our Setup Job screen. And over on the left, you'll see a list of my existing job assignments. So I have various zones that people can be assigned to, but I also have things like officer in charge and light duty available. Now, for each job that you create, you'll need a 5-character code. The 5-character code is how that job will be displayed on the schedule. So in this case, Diane Jordan is assigned to Zone 1, along with additional assignments. So that's how it would be displayed to the left of her name. Along with the code, you have a full description for the job assignment. You can also assign it a sort number. So if this is a particular job that you use more frequently than others, you may choose to give it a lower number. So the lower the number, the higher up it appears on any list of available job assignments. So to add another job, let's click on the New button up top, and I'll create a 6th zone. So once again, I'm keeping my codes 5 characters or less. Under the description, I have a little bit more character length available, but just a short description. And just keeping consistent with how I have my other zones numbered, I'll go ahead and number that one 6. And when I'm done, I can click on the Save button up top. Now, in addition to whether it's a patrol area or any other work assignment, I would recommend that you create a training job assignment. So in the event someone is training during the course of their regular work schedule, we can reflect that information on the schedule. And you'll notice for my training job assignment, over on the bottom right, I have a checkbox labeled Omit Job from Validation. And I have that marked, and the reason why it's marked is because on my shifts, I may be tracking minimum staffing requirements. So if I have someone who is scheduled to work on a particular day, but they're on a training assignment, they might not count towards my minimum staffing requirements. Now, if your agency is interested in tracking that kind of information or entering what those requirements are, I would recommend marking Omit Job from Validation for that training job assignment. Another example where that might apply is under light duty. So in the event that you have someone working on the schedule who's assigned to light duty and you would consider them not to count towards minimum staffing, you would just make sure that Omit Job from Validation is marked. Now, I also happen to have Omit Job from Roll Call OT. In my system, I actually pay roll call time. Since someone who's on light duty is not going to get a job assignment on that day, they may be omitted from earning any of the roll call OT. Now, if your agency does not use roll call, you can simply leave that checkbox unmarked. We're going to look at one more example of a job assignment. This one is called Officer in Charge. So in the event that you have a particular type of work status that will affect someone's pay, you can use a job assignment, and under the premium code, I would recommend re-entering the code that you placed up top. And the reason why we do this is if someone who is working as an OIC, as a field training officer, if there's any pay upgrade whatsoever, we can then extract this information for reporting purposes and possibly for payroll purposes. I'll enter another example of a job assignment. This one will be my field training officer. And this is a little different from the other training job assignment that we already had in here. Whereas this training job is meant for anyone who is out training. This is for any individual who's acting as a field training officer. Once again, if pay is affected, if someone is paid additionally for working under this capacity, re-enter the code into the premium code field. And again, we'll be able to use that information to either report on or to transmit over to a payroll system. Now, because we're in the early stages of our schedule build, we're not going to worry about entering in payroll IDs at this time. If and when you decide to take the leap into interfacing with your payroll systems, the codes will be applied at that time. And along those lines, if you do pay any sort of a premium for a certain job, such as field training officer or officer in charge, we'll be able to report that in hourly increments, or if someone is simply paid a flat rate or flat amount for working in that capacity, maybe for a particular shift, we can report it that way as well. So we're pretty flexible on how we can transmit that over to your payroll system. In addition to creating jobs, we also have the ability to create what we call schedule details. These are categories of assignments, and they can be used for things like equipment. And so if you want to create a category for vehicles or for rifles, tasers, any piece of equipment that someone might be assigned during the course of their shift, and you want that information posted on the schedule, we can show you how to do that as well towards the end of this class. Since we're done with setup jobs, we'll go ahead and close that screen out, and we're going to move on to creating our day off reason codes and overtime reason codes. But before I do that, I'd just like to open things up for questions. Now, I believe everyone is self-muted. That's perfectly fine. If you want to unmute yourself to ask me a question about setting up jobs, how they're used, I'd be happy to answer those at this time. Or if you're more comfortable using the chat option and go to training, that would be fine as well. So I'd just like to allow a few minutes or a minute or two for any questions on job assignments.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I might later on, but not right now.
Okay.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Okay. We will move on then to the next item on our list, which is found under the Schedule Exceptions Center. So within this category of the admin menu, we'll be able to create day off reasons and overtime reasons that your users will be able to select from. We're also going to create pay types that are associated with overtime work. The first item we're going to look at on this list, though, is set up day off codes. On this screen, you'll see a list of my existing day off reason codes that I am tracking. You can have as many as you need, as many as you feel you're going to need to report on. And when you create these, you'll just want to make sure that you assign the day off reason a 5-character code, 5 characters or less. So I'm using VAC for vacation. I'm writing out the description. I have the units, which can be set to either hours or days, so depending on your usage of that type of time off, go ahead and select which one fits. Next, give the day off a 1-character abbreviation. This abbreviation is only used in certain schedule views, primarily yearly schedule views where there's a very limited amount of space to display detail. So we summarize time off using these abbreviations. Next, if the time off actually has a bank of time, make sure that you have track as day off selected. And there might be certain types of time off where this does not apply. Bereavement, funeral leave are examples of things that we have rights to, but we don't necessarily have a bank of time that we draw from. We use it as we need it. But for items like vacation, sick, and personal time, you want to make sure that track as day off is marked. Under Bank to apply, the code will be listed for you. As soon as you enter the code up top, it's going to assume that you want to create a bank with the same name. Over to the right, there's a series of checkboxes. The only one you'll have to worry about for now is the one labeled Allow to Select from Web. Now, your web portal is going to be the main interface that your basic users and supervisors are using for their scheduling needs. And what this says is that this particular type of time off can be selected by a basic user or a supervisor. Now, going back to my earlier examples of the bereavement and funeral leave, those might be things that your basic users may not necessarily request. Those might be things that are posted on the schedule for them. So as you're entering them in, just decide which ones you want them to be able to request and leave the ones unmarked for which you will be applying those administratively. On the bottom portion of the screen, you have color codes available. And so as these time off entries are posted on the schedule, they will be displayed in colors indicating their approval status. Here we recommend that approved entries are displayed in green. Items that are approved with stipulation are entered in yellow or displayed in yellow. Request in blue, and denied entries in red. Now, the reason why we are suggesting this color coding is because there's certain parts of the system where time off and overtime entries are displayed using these colors, specifically within the web portal that your basic users will be using day to day. All of that information is coded using these colors, and it's hard-coded into some of those views. So in order to keep things consistent, we would recommend using this color scheme. Now, most of you are familiar enough with the approve, request, and deny concepts, but approve with STIP might be a new one for you. And I just wanted to point out that approve with STIP is sort of like a temporary approval, or it might just be a step in the approval process. So we're basically, when using this type of status, we're saying that the item is approved, but we're flagging it in such a way where it could be taken back or denied at a later time. If something on the schedule occurs that now we need to take that day off back, that item is coded in a very specific way. So we're going to just add one more item here. I was mentioning funeral leave. And so you may just want to abbreviate it similar to how I have it set up here. Enter your description, enter the units of time, enter an abbreviation. For this particular example, I'm not going to track that as a day off, meaning there's no bank tied to it. Now, this does not mean I can't track the time off activity. So this could be a little confusing, but whether there's a bank of time attached to that day off or not, you will still be able to track all time off activity for any of the reasons that you have created. Over to the right, choose whether or not you want to allow your users and supervisors to select that option from their web portal. And at the very bottom, just apply the color coding to the approve, approve with STIP, requested, and denied approval statuses. So click on the button, choose the color, and click OK. And just continue doing the same thing. And you can always switch the font color just to make it a little easier to read. And when you're done, click on the Save button. Now, as you enter new items, you'll notice that the color coding is tracked for you. So we place a border around the color so you know exactly what you had selected for the last day off reason. And at that point, you just have to click on the OK button. It already has the item highlighted for you. Once again, changing the font color might help. So just something to keep in mind when you're adding these. Now, there might be additional checkboxes that we may need to apply towards your day off reasons, such as overtime allowed or allowed time sellback on web. These are items that will be covered in later classes, specifically your advanced setup classes. So for now, the only checkbox you're going to be concerned with is this one here, allow to select from web. Also, you'll notice at the very bottom here, you have a series of payroll codes that can be attached to each day off reason. Once again, because of the early stages that you're in, we're not going to know exactly which payroll codes need to be applied at this time. We can always add them during your advanced setup classes if and when you decide to interface with your payroll company. Are there any questions on entering our day off reason codes before we move on to our overtime reason codes.
Just one on that. Applied to sick events, that's going to be covered in the advance.
Yeah, and a lot of that's going to have to do with what your reporting needs are. So if you need to report,
If you select sick on your description thing, what is that? Is that checked off over there?
no, it doesn't apply in my case. So this is for departments where not only are they tracking how much sick time people are using, but are they taking several sick days in a row, and are they counting that as one sick event? So what this does is this allows us to track sick activity beyond just day-to-day, hour by hour. It allows us to say, okay, well, I want to know how many sick events this person took. And a sick event for me might be considered, let's say, 3 days in a row would be one sick event.
Okay.
It's
not something like FMLA leave or something like that.
No.
Okay.
But what you can do is, I would suggest having like an FMLA day off code in there. And what you can do is when you create that, if you need that to draw from your sick bank, just change the bank over to sick. So you can have like an FMLA sick. There's some folks out there that will have multiple FMLA day off codes that are linked to, sick or vacation, because it might all come from a sick or vacation leave bank, but you may want to track that day off activity, separately. And you would be able to do that using this method I just showed you.
Okay.
Any other questions on entering day off reason codes?
I don't have any more right now.
Okay. Okay, so we will move on to the next item on the list, which is called Setup Overtime Codes. So here you can have as many overtime reasons as you'll need. It all comes down to how closely you want to track and report on overtime activity. Now, each overtime reason will need a code, once again, 5 characters or less, a description. In most cases, the units will be set to hours. You will have the option to set mandatory hours callback, which is a minimum amount of hours that particular overtime reason will pay out. And we normally see that for things like a court-type overtime. I may be there a half hour, but I might be paid a 3-hour minimum for that. So you can certainly use that field. And in fact, I have it set up for my court that it has a 2-hour minimum. At the bottom, you'll have a list of available pay options. So if you leave this unmarked, that means all pay options are available whenever someone is requesting that type of overtime. Otherwise, you can restrict which pay types are available by checking just the ones that are valid. So by marking this 1.5 cash, that means that is the only option your basic users will have whenever they request that type of overtime. So let's enter a brand new item. Let's click on the New button. And I'm going to create one for late call overtime. So this one would be used in situations where someone's shift ran a little long. They're going to submit a request for overtime payment, in which case they would select the late call, or you can call it whatever works best for you. I'll use L call. Under the description, I'll go ahead and spell that out. I'll set that to hourly units. I won't set mandatory hours callback. This would simply be, hour for hour. And below, at the moment, I'll only choose 1.5 cash as the only available pay type for this overtime reason. Over to the left, overtime items only have one color code that can be applied. This is going to be used mainly on your daily schedule views. So, black would work just fine. I would not use the green or blues that you're using for time off, only because it may confuse things on the daily schedules. When people are working overtime, it looks like a day off entry. It's color coded. So you want to make sure that the colors are not, confusing. Now, as I mentioned before, there are certain views, specifically views for your basic users, where they can look at their time off and overtime activity, where that will be hard-coded to green, blue, and red, and yellow possibly if you're using the approve with stipulation. But this color coding only applies to the daily schedule view. It's one specific view where that color is used. We're going to click on the Save button up top, and now that overtime entry is added along with others. And we're just going to close out of the screen for a moment, and we're going to move over to set up pay types. So the pay types you saw on the previous screen were created in this screen. To create a brand new pay type, click on the New button up top, enter a code, and I'll use 1.5T as my abbreviation for 1.5 com time. Under the description, I'll just write out 1.5 time. Under the method, we're going to switch that over. Under factor, I'm going to change that to 1.5. And then below, under bank to apply, I'm going to link that to the bank that time should go in. So whenever someone works 2 hours of overtime and they ask for the com time, the system will automatically calculate that for them. It'll know that they worked 2 hours, but they actually get 3 hours, and those 3 hours will be entered into the comp bank for them to use. Now, there is one possible caveat to that, and that is if your overtime is being recalculated based on the amount of hours someone has to work in a given period of time, well, they might not get time and a half. They might end up getting straight time if they didn't work enough hours. So those rules would still apply, if you have such rules within your agency. Let's click on the Save button, and now we have a brand new pay type. Now, of course, if we were creating a cash pay type, you wouldn't have the option to link it to a day off reason. There's no need for that. So here you just want to figure out how many pay types you're going to need. Do you pay anything at straight cash or straight comp? Is there any situation where that would happen? If so, you'll want to make sure you have a code for that. Same thing for time and a half and possibly double time. Now I do have another example here. called training time, and this is used specifically for people that are training on what is their regular day off. So the way I have my system set up is if that type of overtime is posted onto the schedule, we're going to pay that individual or give them 1 hour of comp time for every training hour. And of course, because of that, I link that directly into the training time bank. So as they accrue it, they're just going to request this type of time off when they want it. Now, after you have created your pay types, you can always go back to your overtime code list and mark the available pay types for each overtime reason. You may be using this to, to handle your grant overtime. And so in your department, you might say, well, you only get paid cash for that. So you may want to make sure that that pay type is marked for that particular overtime reason. Is there any questions on creating overtime reason codes or creating pay types, at least at this moment?
I don't have any questions
Okay.
on this one. Oh, wait, I do have one question. On a mandatory hours callback, it's got the 2. If they're scheduled to work and their overtime, the court isn't, we have a, if it's within that hour before their shift, it just counts as straight overtime. It doesn't count as a 2-hour minimum. So will it figure that out?
No, so in a case like that, I would suggest having like a court overtime reason that can be used as whether it's shift extension or whatever it is that you refer to it now, and then have like another overtime reason that would be used in situations where, if they're off duty or on a regular day off and they get the 2-hour minimum, then they can use that overtime reason from the list.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions at this time with regards to time off or, overtime codes or pay types? Okay. Okay, so the last screen that I have for you this afternoon is found under the List Center, and it is called Setup Schedule Details, or Setup Schedule Details List is the exact name of that screen. So as I mentioned before, aside from the jobs that we started the class off with today, you can create your own categories of items, whether you're assigning people to vehicles, or maybe there's types of equipment, or maybe it's a skill set that a particular person has and you want that information displayed on the schedule. You can create those items here. Now, I already have a car category, and they're listed below. And so to add additional items to an existing category, just type in the item, and I would actually use the same description and additional information field, just in this case car 13 in both columns. And as you're typing these in, you'll notice that it gives you an extra line just below it, so you can continue adding more items. Once you're done, click on the Save button up top, and it'll confirm that additional entries were made. Now, you should already have a car, radio, AED, and work status category. You certainly don't need to use them if you don't want to. But you can also add your own categories, and to do that, click on the New button, enter the name for the category, and this will be rifles. Maybe I assign rifles. And once I click on the OK button, it gives me a blank screen where I can start typing all of the items within that category. Now, these items can be assigned in a very similar fashion to job assignments. They can be assigned on a day-to-day basis, weekly, monthly. You'll be able to report on this activity. So if there's a particular piece of equipment or a vehicle that someone was in on a certain day, and you want to use our system to track that information, you can certainly do that. Once you're done entering those items, click on the Save button, and you're done. Now, if you start building this but decide you're not going to use it, you'll just need to make sure that you delete all of the items within a category before you delete the category. So I'm wiping out all of the rifles here, and only then will it allow me to get rid of that schedule detail item. Is there any questions on creating schedule details?
Yes. On the detail sheets, this is all just a setup thing. I'm just on a user thing or a supervisor that's going to do the scheduling and put it in. What privileges or what do they need to have access to? The same? They have to have administrator rights to be able to do all this?
No, they do not have to have administrative rights. Administrative rights means that you have access to the entire system and everyone in it, but you can actually define security based on the different groups that you have. Now, luckily, our system comes with security defaults. So the way our security is set up is anyone with supervisory privileges will be able to assign any of the jobs that we looked at when we first started today's session, along with any of the schedule details that you might create. So we already have those security settings predefined. Now, you are more than welcome to customize security to fit your needs, but you know, because we have the experience and the knowledge of the system, of course, we actually have basic user security profiles already defined, as well as supervisory security defined.
Okay. What level of privileges would you need to be able to create the jobs?
In order to create jobs, you would have to have administrative privileges. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't allow supervisors to create those categories, but normally what we do as administrators is we create those, and then we provide the supervisors access to assign them. But in your organization, if you feel that it's something that they need to create on their own, you can grant them privileges to do that.
Just to that area?
Basically, you can give anyone access to anything that you would like. Most departments, it's safe to say that there's a group of screens or functions that all basic users need to have, and there's a certain set of screens and functions that all supervisors need to have. But some departments are just different, and they might need to give their basic users a little more access, maybe even a little less. So it's certainly something that you can customize to suit your needs. But with that said, I will suggest that at least at this stage, that you try to use the VCS recommended security settings only because all of the online training classes that we offer are all designed around those settings. So if you stray too far from those, then when you sit down and go through the user and supervisor classes, it's not going to match up 100% anymore. We do actually have advanced setup classes where we show you how to customize security for your needs.
Yes. Okay. Beautiful.
Any other questions on, and not only creating the schedule details, but anything that we have covered this afternoon?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Well, that concludes our session for today. There's just a couple of things I just wanted to point out. Is as you're going through your build, not just for this class, but for any of the basic setup, advanced setup classes, there is these help out sessions on the registration page. So this should look familiar. You signed up for several classes already using a page like this. You'll notice that there's a help out category. So if you run into any issues building the system, maybe your schedules are a little different than the examples we gave you during the class, you can sign up for these one-on-one sessions. They're 45 minutes in length, and there's always, at least a dozen or so available every week. Some of them have already been taken up, but you can sign up for those, and you'll receive a link similar to what you received for this class, and we'll have 45 minutes to address your specific needs. And you can sign up for those as often as you feel you need to.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and also I wanted to just show you, if I may, our YouTube channel. Okay. So this is simply www.youtube.com/VCS software. When you load that, it adds the C, but this is how you would have to enter it in to access the page. So on our channel, if you click on playlists, you'll notice community learning basic training classes, basic setup classes, and advanced setup and training classes. So we click on that one, it's going to show you all of the classes along with the dates. So if you ever want to look at today's video, we usually post these about a day or two after the class. Immediately you'll receive a link with an email. An email with a link that will allow you to view the video within the next hour or two. And you just have to register. You have to enter your email address, and it'll give you access to the video. You can distribute that video link to anyone that you would like. But after about a week or two, that link is no longer valid, and then we post all of them. We archive them on our YouTube channel. So you guys just finished this class. As you can see, there's several instances of that one available, and so you'll see one marked August 23rd on this page. Okay. So number one, you'll receive a link to it, but after about a week or so, that link won't be valid, and if you want to see, you'll have to go to our YouTube channel. That's it.
And that's open access. Anybody can get to this one.
That is correct.
All right.
Okay, folks. So that's all I have for you this afternoon. Unless there's any other questions, that's it for today.
Thank you. No, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I have one question. Just
Sure.
during the setup, we're using the same that SEC ADM. And is there a point where that account would be retired?
We would recommend yes. Just as you're ready to go live, you'll want to change the password to that account or to that username. Now, we don't want to do that until everyone in your organization has a username and password.
Right.
So that account is just going to be used for the duration of the build. And by the way, you can also have multiple people logged on at the same time with that username and password. So if there's just data entry that you guys are dealing with and you have multiple people doing that, they can all use the same username and password at once.
Okay.
Okay. Now, just looking ahead to the next class, Setup Class 3 is where you're going to build your shifts and your schedule rotations. And your schedule rotations are just your work patterns. That's how we refer to them. So you'll just want to come prepared to, enter your day shifts, your night shifts, your admin shifts, but also you'll want to start thinking of your schedules in terms of the different squads or platoons that people work. So it's not enough to know that someone's working a day shift. We have to know, what the pattern is and when that pattern begins. So that's going to be the topic of class number 3 for you guys.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I greatly appreciate it. And please don't forget about the help out sessions and use those as many times as you need.
That sounds good. Well, thank you very much. It's informative again, and look forward to the next one.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.